So it's been about 2 years since I purchased for myself the 2021 14-inch M1 Pro MacBook Pro. And guys, I gotta tell you this right off the bat, it is definitely my favorite Apple notebook or laptop. Yeah, I mean, the terms are interchangeable. Me personally, I like to say notebook. It is the best Apple notebook I have ever purchased for myself. And that's saying a lot because I used to be absolutely in love, not that way, but it really was a great product, with my 2015 MacBook Pro. Yeah, 2015, 2021, quite the big gap in jump. But guys, I'm telling you, there's something about Apple laptops and notebooks. They just do such a great job. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear I love the 2021 M1 Pro MacBook Pro, but it's not perfect. So let's jump into details and talk about my review 2 years later. I quote review because I realize it's kind of late, but sometimes people don't like buying something brand new. There is nothing wrong whatsoever with buying something that was released 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 years ago. All right, so let's jump into the overall design. Much like any Apple product, this thing is beautiful inside and out. It is made of 100% aluminum. It looks and feels premium. It's what I expect from Apple, and I am in no way disappointed, except for one small tidbit, and stay tuned for that. The keyboard feels absolutely amazing, especially coming from my 2015 MacBook Pro. And guys, I gotta tell you, I loved that keyboard. But anytime, for whatever reason, I use that notebook again, it feels so antiquated when compared to the 2021 MacBook Pro keyboard design. It's just perfect. I mean, it really is a perfect keyboard design in my opinion. I have no issues with it whatsoever. It feels great, it works great, and I've had no problems. And speaking of no problems, the MacBook Pro has been absolutely perfect in this regard as well. I/O. In other words, input and output. Meaning my 2021 MacBook Pro has more I/O than I actually need, and I actually do quite a bit of work on this thing, but in regards to I/O, there are ports I've quite literally never used and probably never will use. Okay, so we've got 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, otherwise known as USB-C. Currently, I'm using one of those ports to connect to my Apple Studio display. And guys, get this, my Apple Studio display charges my MacBook Pro via Thunderbolt 4. And I think that's absolutely incredible. That is one less power cable to worry about. But even then, I often connect my MacBook Pro using my MagSafe connector. And that has been an absolute godsend because that's something I really enjoyed about my 2015 MacBook Pro. And well, it's no secret, Apple kind of took a break from MagSafe to just have you use USB-C instead. And yeah, USB-C works great. I mean, it's working perfectly right now. Again, it's being powered by my studio display and charging at the same time. But there is something really nice about magnetically connecting the MagSafe connector, and I'm just so glad it's back. I use it all the time. We also have one headphones jack. Gotta be honest, I don't think I ever used it, and I don't think I ever will. Gone are the days of using wired headphones. I mean, honestly guys, when Apple took away the headphones jack years ago, people lost their ish. And I don't know why. I mean, yeah, there are always going to be those users who prefer wired headphones. I get that. But if Apple never makes a change with their products, well, then they're never going to evolve. They're never going to innovate. And I'm so glad they dropped it from their iPhone lineup. But with that said, I do have good news for those who do require wired headphones for whatever reason. Well, there is a headphones jack on the 2021 MacBook Pro. But again, I'll say it one more time. I have never ever used it. And speaking of never using it, we also have an HDMI port on the 2021 MacBook Pro. Never used it, never will. I don't need to. It's just not useful for me, but obviously there are people out there who would use it. Otherwise, Apple would have never included HDMI to begin with. And finally, we have an SD card slot. This is an absolute godsend. And guys, I gotta say, when Apple took this away years ago, it baffled me. It baffled millions of Pro users because it made us think like, why is Apple taking away something so useful? And I'm so glad it's back because I use the SD card slot on my MacBook Pro at least 2 times a week. And now let's talk weight. How heavy is the 2021 MacBook Pro? Well, it's only 3.5 pounds. And I gotta tell you this right now, I have never once had an issue with it feeling too heavy or even too light. And by too light, I mean cheap feeling. But with that said, as I teased earlier in the video, I do have one minor annoyance with the MacBook Pro, and that's the fact that the MacBook Pro feels kind of hollow on the underside of the overall product design. For whatever reason, it just feels not as premium as other MacBook Pros have in the past, but it in no way feels like a cheap laptop from like HP or Lenovo. No offense to users of those products, but there is a fine line between Windows laptops and Apple laptops. It's quite literally night and day. But anyway, with my particular MacBook Pro, it does feel and sound a little hollow on the bottom if you tap it, and sometimes it does click as if the metal, that's my cat sneezing in the background. But anyway, sometimes it does click slightly on the bottom if I hold it just right. But hey, I gotta say, this in no way affects the overall performance and usability of my 2021 MacBook Pro, because other than the small build quality issue on the bottom, it's been absolutely perfect. All right, so let's speed up here because I still have a lot to say, and I feel like I spent way too much time in the first category, but you guys gotta understand, product design is so incredibly important to me. I can't use a product that's not well designed. I can't use something ugly. That's why I don't use myself. Joking, of course, ladies. Anyway, number 2 on my list is an incredible display. This thing absolutely spoils me. Okay, we've got a 14.2-inch liquid retina XDR display with a stunning resolution of 3024 by 1964 and a pixel density of 254 pixels per inch, giving us a retina display. And guys, that is huge. If you've never used a retina display, then let me tell you this right now, you are sorely missing out. Not only that, but the 2021 MacBook Pro also features a 120 Hz Pro Motion display. It's really hard for me to fall in love with a display that's 60 Hz, which I realize is very ironic right now because I'm talking in front of one right now, meaning I'm using the official Apple Studio display. This is a phenomenal display inside and out, absolutely beautiful, but easily the thing I like least about it is the fact that it is 60 Hz. I wish it was 120 Hz. Now the good news is it's got to happen sooner or later, right? But unfortunately, I don't see that happening for quite a while. So for now, I can look past the fact that this display in front of me is only 60 Hz. But when it comes to using something more personal, such as a laptop or an iPhone or an iPad, I need at least 120 Hz. Otherwise, you've lost my interest. That's exactly why I returned my iPad Air literally within 24 hours of unboxing it. Because as soon as I started using that 60 Hz display, I was absolutely disgusted. 60 Hz is gross. It's just not something I'm interested in using. So yeah, guys, that's how much I love the display on the MacBook Pro, and it does not disappoint, except for in one area, and that's the fact that it uses mini LED instead of OLED. Now, what's mini LED? It's almost pure blacks, meaning the pixels aren't necessarily turning off, but the MacBook Pro has so many dimming zones where it tries to turn off the pixels where it can, but in the process, those local dimming zones will actually leak out a little bit. Now, thankfully, this is only something you're going to notice in the dark, and I'm talking about blooming. Sometimes when looking at bright white text against a dark background in a dark room, yes, you are going to see blooming, and if somebody tells you otherwise, they're either lying to you or they have terrible eyesight, because blooming is a fact. It's a trade-off of mini LED. It's physical, like it's something there and something we unfortunately have to deal with until we do get OLED displays officially from Apple. And that could happen sooner rather than later. But for now, it's just a minor annoyance. It doesn't affect my workflow. It doesn't affect my creativity. It's just something that I notice occasionally when working upstairs in my bedroom late at night. It's something I have to deal with. But besides that, the display is absolutely beautiful. It is the best looking laptop display I have ever personally used, and it does support HDR. And sometimes when I occasionally open up an HDR video by accident, it almost blinds me. Okay, not literally, but man, let me tell you, once you see HDR in something like your iPhone or your MacBook Pro or an Android device, it's really hard to go back to something that's SDR. HDR is just beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. And now let's talk about performance. I have the M1 Pro 8-core CPU, 14-core GPU, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and 1 terabyte SSD configuration. And this cost me about $2,500 roughly, plus tax. Now keep in mind, I bought this in 2021, and I'll talk about that more in detail shortly, so stay tuned. But yeah, guys, I gotta tell you, in regards to performance, I have had zero issues whatsoever when using it as a notebook and or desktop. I'm using my MacBook Pro right now, docked as a desktop on my studio display, and it's been perfect. Absolutely perfect. It never ever lags. It exports probably like a 10-minute 1080p video probably within like 2 or 3 minutes. That's how quick it is. Now, of course, it's going to differ from video project to video project. Well, because obviously it depends on whether you use the A.264 codec, whether you're using video filters and all that stuff. Another topic for another day. But anyway, guys, I do consider myself a prosumer, meaning I'm a consumer that occasionally and actually often does professional tasks. For example, I am often multitasking to the point where I'm using almost 32 gigabytes of RAM. 32 gigabytes of RAM is a lot of RAM, and I'm saying it like that because I guarantee you the average user doesn't use more than 16 gigabytes daily. But all the time, I find myself doing the following at the same time: rendering a video in Final Cut Pro, exporting in ScreenFlow, streaming media to my Plex server, which is technically my MacBook Pro, so it's streaming from my MacBook Pro to something like my Xbox Series X. And finally, I'm doing all of this while working in Photoshop at the same time, and I never ever see the MacBook Pro lag to the point where it annoys me. Like maybe sometimes I'll say a beach ball because that's just me throwing a lot at it, but generally speaking, it's flawless. It's absolutely awesome. Now, of course, if I'm doing all this while working on my lap, then yeah, of course, it's going to get quite warm. Don't let the M1 and M2 hype fool you. I mean, yeah, they are incredible processors, but they do run hot if you push them to your limits like I do on pretty much a weekly basis. All right, so let's talk about my bare minimum recommendations for a user like myself. Again, I do have the 32 gigabyte RAM configuration with a 1 terabyte SSD. Okay, so honestly, if I were to do it all over again, 32 gigabytes of RAM would be my bare minimum. Honestly, I would probably go with 64 gigs, which I get it. A lot of people are saying, David, that's overkill. But again, with my workflow, I'm often hitting that 32 gigabytes maximum. And the same goes for my 1 terabyte SSD. Now, generally speaking, 1 terabyte is enough. But next time I would like to go for a bare minimum of 2 terabytes, just because I work with a lot of video files and I often find myself offloading video files from my MacBook Pro to an external hard drive. So yeah, guys, overall, I am absolutely in love with my MacBook Pro in regards to the overall product design, the display. Oh, and by the way, the speakers, I didn't even put in my notes. The speakers sound absolutely phenomenal. Now, it's not gonna fill your room and break down your walls with insane bass, but let me tell you, Apple spoils me, absolutely spoils me with premium audio. Anytime I have the displeasure of using a Windows laptop, guys, I'm telling you, the audio on those things are absolutely laughable. Now, I realize that's not the general consensus for all Windows laptops, but there is a fine line between okay speakers and speakers that just blow my mind. And the speakers on the MacBook Pro actually do kind of blow my mind. Like, they're really, really good. Bass is great, highs are great, mids are great, lows are great. Like, overall, the speakers just sound awesome. And finally, let's wrap up this long video with one very important question. Should you buy M1 over the M2 in 2023? Okay, so I have a great comparison for you guys. So I went over to apple.com and I tried to configure a similarly spec'd M2 MacBook Pro in 2023, and with similar specs, you're looking to spend at least $2,599 plus tax. So after tax, you're looking at what, like $2,800, and then you can't forget you might be able to squeeze in a third-party case or whatever on Amazon. So realistically speaking, after you buy everything you need, cables, adapters, blah, 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 you're spending about $3,000. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. However, what if I were to tell you you could get something similar for about $1,000 less? All right, so I went over to the Apple refurbished store online, apple.com, to see what I could get. Well, guys, get this. You could get an M1 MacBook Pro with 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 gigabyte SSD. I realize that's half and half, but that's the closest I could find because keep in mind, unlike new, you cannot configure refurbished products on Apple. Anyway, at the end of the day, you can get a similarly spec'd MacBook Pro for about half the cost of a brand new M2 MacBook Pro. And that's $1,539 plus tax. Now keep in mind, the RAM is cut in half, the SSD is cut in half. But yeah, let's be honest, how many people are going to be using more than 16 gigabytes of RAM? Probably not many. Now me, of course, yeah, I would have made that clear. And also keep in mind, the storage is cut in half as well from 1 terabyte to 512 gigabytes. But again, there's nothing stopping you from getting a $60 or $80 external hard drive from Amazon just to offload data, maybe on a monthly basis. So guys, you're quite literally cutting your price by $1,000 from $25.99 down to $15.39 plus tax. I realize refurbished products are not technically brand new, but when you receive them, in theory, they are in like new condition, meaning you get a fully functional testing process over at Apple. Everything is thoroughly cleaned and inspected. They are repackaged with the original cables, manuals, and even a brand new box. They're covered by a 1-year warranty. And get this, you can even purchase Apple Care for a refurbished product because, well, if for whatever reason something goes wrong, then you'll want to be covered. So whether it's new or refurbished from Apple, you are covered no matter what. It sounds like an ad, but I've been recently researching a lot of things over at apple.com in their refurbished store, and I gotta say, I'm quite impressed, and I've been watching a few videos on YouTube. People have had excellent experiences going that route when buying and saving literally about $1,000. It's just crazy. Because, well, let's be honest, going from M1 to M2 is not exactly a huge jump. And well, even then, M1 over the previous Intel processors, that alone is a significant jump. And I just cannot in confidence recommend going with any Intel-based Mac these days. There's quite literally no point unless you have to dual boot into Windows. Anyway, guys, there you go. That is my 2-year review of the MacBook Pro from 2021. Again, M1 Pro, 1 terabyte SSD, 32 gigabytes of RAM, 14-inch. Overall, a phenomenal laptop. Sorry, notebook. Let me know, are you a fan of the MacBook Pro? Have you bought one in the past? Do you plan on buying one? Let me know in the comment section right below. Let's get a discussion going. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.